Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Veroosh and this is your reading for August 22nd, 2021. This is a date of a full moon that's going to happen at 5 o'clock in the morning Pacific time or 8 in the morning Eastern time. This full moon is happening in the sign of Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign. If you have transits in Leo, Scorpio, Taurus, or Aquarius, you share with this full moon the fixed modality. And if you have transits in Libra, Gemini, or Aquarius, you share with this full moon the air elemental dignity that has to do with the mind. This is a second full moon in Aquarius this year, which is rare. And it is on the 29th degree of Aquarius, which is also very rare and very special. I'll explain in the video what that means, bring that to your awareness at this time. There's been several different Aquarian transits that have been significant this year, ever since the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at the beginning of the year, December 2020. And it is also a full moon that marks the center point energetically of this year, meaning that the energy of the first half of the year up until this point will be significantly different than the energy from here on in. This means that your experiences with other people will change, your interpretations of the world, what's required of you will change, and who you are in relation to others will change in the latter part of the year. The first half of the year had a lot to do with consolidation, which means that we looked inward and began to really heal ourselves from the past couple years of turmoil and the conjunctions in Capricorn. The second part of the year is much more forward-looking. There are still reflective elements, meaning that we'll think about the past, but it's going to be a preparatory period for 2022 and moving forward, which means that this is get on with it sort of energy. So in other words, we're not meant to anymore sit around and think about what happened in the past. This is a time to take a quick look at our present moment and make plans for tomorrow. The astrology of this full moon is quite complicated. It has complex symmetry and has many different layers or perspectives that you can see it through. Because of this video turned out to be quite long, and so I've decided to separate it into two different videos. Today we're going to cover the astrology, and I'll explain to you all the symmetries that are happening and why they're significant and what to expect from them. I really recommend you watch this video or watch those parts. There is a climactical symmetry that I want to describe to you, but I have to describe all the steps in between before we get to that. So I really recommend that you try to watch the whole video. If you don't have a lot of time to watch it, then I suggest you either break it up or you watch it in double time. I watch a lot of videos in double time. It saves me time. It gets me the information I'm looking for and helps me get on with my day. In the second video, we will do collective tarot reading. You'll actually see the video in the background of that today, the layout of the members only, as well as the general tarot collective message. I'll also summarize today's message for you in the second video. That won't have any explanations. It will just tell you what frequencies are and what to expect. And then third, the activation points, which are very popular. I like them a lot, which means that I will pick dates from 1940 onward. And if you were born on those dates or if something significant for you happened on those dates are going to be activated by the transits we're talking about, and in this case, the full moon. If you want more information on Aquarian energy, on Jupiter and Aquarius, Saturn and Aquarius, or the Great Conjunction, I'm going to put all of those videos in the upper right hand corner and in the description in the playlist called Aquarian Full Moon, August 2021. Okay? Thank you guys so much for sitting here with me today. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope that your second half of the year is wonderful and bright. Hey guys, so let's talk about the astrology, and I'm going to maybe pull some cards for you guys as I go through the different parts. I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but I guess you have to look at something, right? This is the spread that I did for members. Honestly, I did that yesterday and I don't remember anymore anything that's about. The only thing that I remember that was really exciting was this. Ace of Wands with the Fool as the last card. Definitely new beginnings. Definitely some kind of initiation point for a big new start. Oh yeah, I remember. So I'll tell you the summary of my take on it, and we'll lead into the full moon reading with that. Essentially, it's don't worry about the little things that are happening in your life right now. There's something that's coming in a short while that's going to pull you out of your current situation and offer you a new path, a new beginning, something much better, something much brighter. So I think it's something that you will look forward to. It's going to be a very good opportunity in a good direction. And so yeah, so I think that if you are going through some life stress at the moment, carry on through. There's also a big message about love, but I'll let you watch that part. It's the last part in the video to hear about that. So yeah, definitely some good things coming in. The astrology is interesting. So again, if you happen to miss the last full moon reading, let me catch you up to speed. There was a full moon in Aquarius on July 24th, and so it's been a special time in that there are two full moons in the same sign within a month. So I think blue moon refers to when the full moon happens in the same month, but this is a different type of moon in which this is more of the significant full moon because it's happening in the same sign twice, which is very rare and atypical. And not only that, the first full moon happened at 1 degree something, and then this full moon is happening in the last few minutes of the 29th degree. The 29th degree is a blessed spot. In this degree, everything that has been happening until this point comes into fruition. Everything that has been resolving itself gets resolved. The good efforts that you have put into your life bear fruit at this time. Final lessons are learned, big completions, and so forth. So whenever you see a transit, or if you have a natal transit in the last degree of a sign, any sign, it doesn't have to be Aquarius, then you know it's special. It's a very big degree to do with closing and signifying a change of a closure of a cycle. Are we closing a cycle though? Yes and no. So the big cycle this year is that Aquarian energy has been activated right since the Great Conjunction that started the year essentially. And the Great Conjunction was the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in the first degree of Aquarius, in the zero degree on the winter solstice, which is December 21st or 20th, 2020. And so this conjunction led into everything that's been happening now. And how has 21 been? Well, 20, I'm going to call it just 20 and 21 because we're hip like that now. We're in the 20s. Hey, roaring 20s. But anyway, so I think that in some way last year was a shock, right? It was a shock for all of us, and all of us went through things. It was just gnarly. And this year has been almost stranger. Like in some ways, things have calmed down. The shock and the horror has changed. For many people, the shock and the horror has been just as intense as they've been struggling with the consequences of what's been going on. So by no means am I, saying that it's less for them, but overall I feel like we're kind of in that process of accepting what's happened and trying to figure out what to do about it and what to go on. Furthermore, a big part of 2021, at least from my perspective, has been the fact that certain people in power or certain people who have a lot of money have figured out how to monetize and capitalize upon this situation, which always happens. So when something crazy happens, everybody's stir crazy, they don't know which way is up. But as things continue and a situation continues, people who make it a habit to make money off of tragedy, they start solidifying their power in this way. So 2021, at least the way that I'm seeing it, has been a more systematic way in which the people who like to profiteer off of tragedy have started setting up systems, even more so than last year, to funnel power and wealth into their own pockets. So there's been this kind of self-awareness point in terms of people who are in control. And so this full moon in some way is a decompression of that. To bring you back, we were just talking about the new moon, which happened at 16 degrees of Leo, and that was in opposition to Saturn, right? Or was very close to an opposition to Saturn, and we had this us versus them kind of energy. And so us versus them, meaning those people that are trying to do these kinds of things, trying to control us, trying to limit our freedoms for their own advancement and their own advancement. Let's just say it that way. And so this new moon it was smack dab between the full moons. In between, Jupiter has re-entered Aquarius, and maybe not for all of you, but for many of us, it's been an energy of coming to terms with what's happening around us, while at the same time there is a new world order being established. And I don't mean like NWO in that, classic meme sort of way. There is definitely, like with any situation, players that are coming onto the world stage or different kinds of business situations and asserting their stake and their territory in what's going on. So they're sort of building a system off of what's already happened. And that's happening on all levels: government, business, healthcare, all of these things are happening. And so as individuals, we're sitting here and paying attention. Here's the earth. And we're like, oh, okay, this is happening. And I actually see far less collectivized dissension this year as compared to, let's say, last year when all the protests around the world erupted. And I think last year was an expression of the fact that the power structures that govern us were in just as much shock as we were, and they had less power in a sense because we had that window of opportunity to confront the dystopic power or the despotic power that they have. And unfortunately, it's my take that we didn't actually achieve those goals. We fell short. Yes, there was a lot of protests and there was a lot of that kind of thing, but I don't think we actually made that fundamental change. And this year, I think that those powers in some way have already regained their foothold on power, and so criticism of their power has become much more difficult, and we've become much more fractured as a collective. So I think that's sort of part of the energy right now, and that's my take on what's going on. By the way, I'm going to do a summary statement on all of this right after this. I'm going to put it in right after I do this. I understand, like, just a summary without any transits and just like a little blurb on things I think you should focus on. But I think we're sitting here in between these full moons, and there's all of this kind of centralization of power, where the power is being centralized, and legislation is being passed to control certain things. Some things must be controlled. I'm not against governance, but there's definitely this crystallization of power, which is a bigger part of the Saturn-Uranus square dynamic that's going on. This kind of negotiation between the population, us collectively, the rebellion, right, and the power structures that hold power in certain ways. Saturn in Aquarius, I would say, is a version of Saturn that has a lot to do with legislation in the air sign. I talked about this in the conjunction video, and so I'll just repeat it right here. Jupiter in Aquarius also, so an increase in legislation, which means an increase of amounts of laws that are being passed and so forth that we are responsible to. So I think that's just the general gist of the frequency. Now, I have some friends that sell crystals whose birthdays are on this cusp, and they're the most wonderful people. Hi guys, if you're watching. And so I think this is, if my moon is not quite at 29 degrees of Aquarius, I really wish it was. I just think I wish my moon was a Pisces moon. It's the only transit I would change in my chart. Not that I don't love having an Aquarius moon, but to me a Pisces moon is like the highest evolution of energy. So this just makes my heart tickle, you know, like this 29th degree, this last degree of Aquarius on the cusp of Aquarius and Pisces. It's a really big, energetic completion point for some things that, and it has to do with this, us and the system we live in, the machine that we live in, and how we are all little widgets in a part of a bigger system. It's almost like, yeah, it's just us living in this little toy box, and somebody's controlling the toy box, and we have little parts in it, and we have some freedoms, but they're obviously at times limited. And so that's kind of this energy here. But is it ending with this full moon? In a way, yes. In the tarot portion that you guys just watched, I mentioned that I felt like the first full moon in some way initiated this awareness piece of like what's actually happening around us. You individually may have experienced all these different data points coming in and downloads and insights, and I hope you've been keeping track of them. Everything I just shared with you has been my data points of my perceptions on things that have been happening, things that I have been seeing, and so forth. And so that's where I'm at about 2 weeks before the full moon. But already at this point, Venus has created a trine to Pluto. So I've seen that burst of power come through, and hopefully I'll have more positive messages or more bright and hopeful messages as this trine clears. But for now, I think it's pretty accurate with regard to our place in things individually. But there's a bigger picture. So the second full moon is a completion point in terms of awareness. So you've become aware, come to realize that this is what's going on. These are the factors that control your life. These are the factors that play a factor in your life. But then there's going to be another full moon, and this one's in Pisces. And I feel like at first, last month, I told you that this is a binary system in which there's 2 full moons. But I actually think these full moons are also connected to the Pisces full moon. Having taken a look at the September astrology, I really feel like now we're going to come into catharsis, the emotional catharsis. There will be a lot happening in Libra. Libra's heads up, there's a lot coming your way. And so this September month that we're leading into after this full moon is going to be the emotional, cathartic closure and a decision point with where to go next. So I don't know if I already introduced this concept, but this full moon is also happening at a time when Uranus has gone retrograde on the 19th. This signals a beginning of the last Uranus-Saturn square. And so this Saturn square with Uranus has happened 3 times in 2020. The first square happened in January, the second one in June and July, and now the third one is forming for December. And the turning point for that is August 19th, when Uranus turns retrograde and Saturn and Uranus stop moving apart. So until the 19th, Uranus was going direct in this direction like this. Saturn was retrograde in this direction like this. And so you can see that they were moving apart from each other, and this area was getting wider. So when Uranus turns retrograde, it starts moving towards Saturn. Now Saturn is faster transit, so it's still sort of separating, but at least they're going in the same direction at this point. The next stage will be when Saturn turns direct in October, and will start moving towards Uranus, greatly amplifying this energy. What does this mean? The push and pull between Saturn and Uranus got very intense in June. The push and pull between the status quo and all the new things that are coming up was being negotiated. And a lot of people were taking their perspective and saying, oh, it should be tradition first, but most people were saying, Uranus, let's move forward. My take on it is that this energy is an energy of balance, in which it's not one or the other that needs to be in the lead, or that needs to take the winning. In fact, I'll talk about this in a moment. Maybe I should talk about this now. When we look at history, there's plenty of examples of situations and people and things in which the old was better than what it is now. For example, the ones that I came up with were plastics. So plastics were this new, great new idea, and now we're swimming in plastic, and turtles are choking on plastic, animals are suffocating. It's a dangerous good. And so is the new better? But hold on, I'll have some counters to that. Also, like technology, like screens, cell phones, and so forth, social media. Many of us embraced this newness of the new technology, but now we're finding that more people are depressed, they're addicted to technology, they have all sorts of diseases that are coming up, social diseases, antisocial personality disorder, from overabundance of technology use. Specifically with social media, this has been a problem. So we're finding out that technology, this newness, is not necessarily good for us. It's not necessarily good for the brain. In fact, it's quite well known, so I'm not slandering anyone, but many people who work in Silicon Valley or in tech, they don't allow their kids to use social media at all because it's conditioning and it's not healthy and so forth. And so the people who are making it are the people who are keeping it as far away from themselves as possible. So, just some food for thought about how new things sometimes aren't better. The other example I came up with, there's millions, but fast food. So now there's a big shift towards eating whole foods. I have a garden. Suddenly I'm not very much of a gardener, but when my nails are janky, that's what's going on. I'm growing my own vegetables and food, and it was kind of like a social thing for me, but it was also someone suggested it and I did it. But I'm not really a gardener, rustic person at all. But it's been fine, and it's been a good learning process. And so this idea of when I go to the grocery store, for example, everything, 90% of the store is sugar. When you look at it, between the pastas and the cookies, and even in aisles that are supposedly healthy, normal food, it's all junk food, it's all sugar. So aside from the vegetable section and some of the other sections that have produce in it, so forth, it's all sugar in supermarkets. So we're consuming fast food everywhere, and there's a lot of consequences on people's bodies to do with that. So that's some examples why the new beginnings are not necessarily the best, and sometimes the old isn't the best. And here's some examples of to do with that. So sometimes here's the counter argument with suggesting that like Saturn and the old is not necessarily good. So some of the examples of how we've improved on the past is nobody wants to go back to not having any communication. I lived in Poland when I was little, and we didn't have a phone. So you would make plans with someone for next Tuesday at 2, and if you were meeting I lived in Warsaw, so if you wanted to make plans and hang out there, you had to go there and hope that they show up. And if they didn't show up, you didn't know what happened. It was a very strange sort of system before cell phones and so forth. By the way, I lived there in the 80s. It wasn't that long ago, but because it was communist, there was a lot of restrictions on what people could have and what people could own. And there was political reasons why certain people didn't have access to certain resources, or those resources were hard to come by or to have. So I wasn't living in the 60s or 50s over there, but it was that kind of energy, and maybe some of you who were living in the 50s or 60s can identify with that. So sometimes the new is better. Having the ability to text and to call allows us to have experiences with one another. Another example is before, let's say, the 70s, maybe even 80s, healthcare support was just mental health support was very lacking. And even until very recently, there's many diseases such as eating disorders, autism, that have only very recently become addressed better. I wouldn't say they're even addressed well yet. So we are progressing with a lot of service provision for mental health, and I think none of us would want to be in a system in which our depressions or anxieties are frowned upon. And if you have a more serious condition or a more serious situation in your life, I don't think you'd want to have that situation at a time when just smile and carry on kind of attitudes were the dominant attitude towards mental health. And then also, of course, the social welfare system, which means that we have a social collective welfare system in North America that provides a certain degree of security to people. That wasn't available in the past. So this is how Uranus and the new things around us can greatly benefit us. So here, the argument I'm trying to make is that essentially this push and pull between the old and the new isn't really about one being right and the other being wrong. And I see people often struggling because they want to double down on one and throw away the other. And I think the better approach, like with most things, is to keep an open mind and kind of consider both. I'll tie that all in a minute to everything else, but suffice it to say, the pressure between the old and the new was increasing until June, and then when Uranus went retrograde in August 19th, then that third cycle of heightened confrontation between the old and the new has begun. Now that confrontation, the pressure of the push and pull we've been feeling this year, will not be intensified until October. So until October, Uranus will move retrograde, Saturn will retrograde in Aquarius, and they will still continue to slightly move apart. But when Saturn moves direct and moves towards Uranus, that will be the next step in that final square between the two of them. And so that's significant because Saturn rules Aquarius. It's the ancient ruler of Aquarius, and Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. So you can see the symmetry between the old and the new coming into confrontation with each other. And therefore this double full moon is a serendipity, synchronicity, right? It's happening. These two planets that represent the old and the new are coming together 3 times this year, which is very significant and not too common. And then at the same time, we're getting this very not too common full moon in Aquarius that these 2 planets happen to rule and govern. And so therefore the flow or the energy of this full moon is a heightened energy of everything that we need to be aware of. And that's why on the first full moon, I told you guys to pay attention this month. And this is why I'm kind of doing this early, because I want you to pay attention for the next week and a half on your personal level, what you need to change. You're getting huge insights right now, especially on the tail end of the North Node with Aldebaran. So that's very important. So that's kind of the great synchronicity of what's going on. There's more to say. Hold on. I want to also tell you about this little part here. So there's something called the void of course. The void of course of the moon means that the last time that the moon makes an aspect to a planet before it changes signs, it's supposed to be a quieter time in your day. And so the moon changes sign every 2.5 days, and there's a certain period of time between the last time it makes an aspect to another transit and the transition into the ingress into the next sign. And so with this full moon, this is significant, of course, because the moon will enter into Pisces just 40 minutes after it forms the heightened portion of this full moon. So you can say in some way that there is no void of course, but there is a subtle one between 5:02 a.m. Pacific or 8:02 Eastern and 5:42 or 8:42 in the morning Eastern when the moon enters into Pisces. So right after this full moon happens, I don't know how to necessarily tell you to approach this. Most of you will be sleeping. But I think if I was an Aquarian Pisces, I'd take it pretty easy through that time and take it as a spiritual moment. Maybe spend that 40 minutes in meditation, or just be with your loved ones early in the morning, have a nice breakfast or something like that, because it's like a spiritual moment, if anything. I don't really talk about the void of course too much, but I think that this is resonant. To add to this, the sun will move into Virgo, so Virgo season starts on the 22nd as well. That will happen at 2:35 p.m. on the 22nd, so later on that same day. So we have a massive shift in frequency between Aquarius Leo to Virgo Pisces happening. And so it's that this is data points. So we're collecting data points, as I've described, between the 2 full moons, and when the moon enters into Pisces and the sun enters into Virgo, I think that the cathartic point will really start. The cathartic and the understanding of what's going on and like how we feel about it, what we want to do about it, okay? There's more. There's a lot of astrology. I don't mean to rattle on, but okay. So here is the 2 big pieces. So who rules this full moon? I hope you're seeing the symmetry, and I'll try to put together like a nice summary at the end for you without using the astrology, so you can understand the resonance for it in your life. But who rules this full moon? Well, the sign of Aquarius, as we said, is ruled by Saturn and Uranus. So they both rule Aquarius, and there's a lot of energy there for them to do that. However, there is also a second set of rulers. Each part of the sign is ruled by a planet. So there are 3 sections or decans in each sign, and so they're governed by specific planets. And those rulers are different based on modern astrology and ancient astrology. The reason for this is modern astrology uses the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, because they were found in the last couple hundred years. And so these decans, or these decans, are ruled by different planets because of this, in part. And so the traditional ruler of the third decan or decan of Aquarius is the moon. So 7 of Swords. And so this is a powerful transit. Of course, the energy frequency of this is the moon is in the sign of Aquarius and is ruled by Saturn, which is in Aquarius. So the ruler is directly affecting this full moon as per traditional astrology. I'll just add that the sun is with the fixed star Regulus and is in rulership in the last degree, in the 29th degree in Leo. So the light of the sun in rulership in Leo, it only rules one sign, is extremely powerful here. So I think that a lot of what's going on is heightened by the fact that not only the moon is in the 29th degree, but the sun in opposition to the moon is in the 29th degree in rulership, its most powerful position, in conjunction to this very famous star. Regulus is considered, we've been talking a lot about Sirius and Aldebaran. Now Sirius is famous. Sirius is no joking matter, right? That's a joke. I don't know how many of you guys picked up on that. But Regulus traditionally has been considered the star of kings. And so in some ways it's such a powerful transit. So the fact that it's in this position, there's like a powerhouse energy to the light of the sun that's being reflected off of this full moon. So I think that it's, the more that I look at it, there is this spiritual component to this full moon about coming to terms with and really understanding you and the world that you live in and what it matters to you, okay? Now, there's a second ruler to each decan, right? And that is the modern ruler. So in terms of modern astrology, Venus is actually the ruler of the moon. This is going to get very interesting, so stay with me. So Venus is in rulership in Libra, and so therefore her energy is powerful. So there's this concept called dispositors. And so the moon in Aquarius is controlled by Venus in Libra in rulership. So whichever way we're considering this, whether it's the moon that is guided by Saturn in rulership in Aquarius or Venus in Libra, either way, we're looking at a powerhouse full moon guided by the light of the sun in rulership, regardless of modern or traditional system. All of this means is that it's a heightened energy. And then when we take it back to Saturn and Uranus, here I'll show you the synchronicity or the symmetry of this runs even deeper. So Saturn is in rulership in Aquarius. We're not touching that. It's in its home sign. And so as per traditional astrology, it's the most powerful transit here. But Uranus is in Taurus, right? And what is Taurus ruled by? Look over here. It's Venus. So even though Uranus is activated by this transit because it's the ruler, the modern ruler of Aquarius, it's actually answering, or the dispositor of its energy is Venus. And so Venus controls the whole sign of Aquarius at this time through her navigation of Uranus. So this is a little bit more advanced astrology, but I hope you guys can follow along. You're only meant to understand that all of these transits that are affecting the moon are heightened in power. They're so powerful, and they're giving you so much energy at this time to come into awareness. So just to remind you, that void of course, which means that darkened period of the moon before it switches signs, is 5:02 in the morning to 5:42 Pacific time. 8:02 in the morning to 8:42 Eastern time. And so just as this full moon happens, I would suggest that you go into some kind of reflection about the last month, and information that has come up for you through that time. And then looking forward, I would be pretty excited about the full moon in Pisces, which we'll get to as a foreshadow to tell you what's happening in the future. I think that will be, the next month will be an emotional catharsis of everything. You'll in some way come to terms with everything. So this full moon, which is, your Fool is ruled by Uranus, is being active. So the Fool is activated by Uranus. With this full moon, you're fundamentally starting some kind of new beginning. Does that mean that you're going to actually make a choice? In some cases, yes, but you're fundamentally reorienting your direction, and that's in symmetry to the North Node with Aldebaran that I've been telling you about since June. So in some way, this whole 3 months, June, July, and August, is you coming to terms with the last 2 years and sort of making certain decisions about who you want to be moving forward. A lot of people are not going back to their jobs. A lot of people are going in different directions. The reason they're doing this is because they're coming to terms with the reality of things, and they've had enough of a pause in their life to say, wait a minute, I gotta go somewhere else because this is killing my life. This is sucking the energy out of my life. And so I think that at this time there's some fundamental changes that are happening for you and for others. So embrace that. And I really do strongly see for this year altogether, for all of you, for all of us, is that there is this choice to be with each other. I think we've collectively lived a pretty sheltered life. Many of us haven't had to face really disease or difficult things like previous generations have. And so now that we've had maybe a taste of it, depending on your situation, I think many of us have been woken up by this experience. Not that it's a silver lining, but it has woken many people up. And in doing so, I'm not surprised to see big indications and beginnings of love, heart opening energy. And so that's happening at this time. So you guys want to go just a little bit deeper. So here is the Arc de Triomphe, the really beautiful part of this. So this is on the level of the Star of David we talked about, the Aldebaran symmetries. This is a little bit of a creative astrology. So bear with me, and if you like astrology that's very traditional and conformist, this isn't it. So let me get into it. So let's start with Venus. So Venus is very powerful for this full moon. Venus guides the heart. She's in rulership in the sign of Libra. And so therefore she brings a lot of power. What's happening for Venus in the next little while? So let me tell you. So over the next few days, there is going to be an energy of a friction for Venus. So at this point, there's a lucidity. There's actually a trine between Venus and Saturn that forms through this time. So either system, the new or the old, remember Uranus and Saturn, new ruler, old ruler, kind of beautiful, right? And so there's a trine between these two systems. So it's not about choosing one or the other. It's about figuring out where we are in between those two things. Okay, I'm excited, so bear with me. So there's this beautiful energy with this full moon on Venus in terms of self-actualization, becoming aware of who you are and the beauty of your existence, and saying yes to love, saying yes to authentic experiences when people reach out to you and when people want to be a part of your life, and making bold changes and not holding back because of the shoulds and have tos and so forth. So there's a fundamental opportunity to change here if you are daring and if you are really living with your heart. Okay, here we go. So beautiful moment for Venus with this full moon. And I don't mean to be discouraging, but one of the things that's happening at this time is that the energy that was so high between Venus and Mars in July when they formed their conjunction in Leo became somewhat more distant as Venus pushed ahead, left Mars behind in Virgo, and now has moved into Libra. So in July, we've had this very powerful connection between the feminine and the masculine. Then there's a slight separation as they move apart in Virgo. And now that Venus has moved into Libra and Mars is in Virgo, it's a discordant frequency between Virgo and Libra. They're not the same frequency anymore. So what does that mean? The feminine and the masculine are not on the same level at this time. And so Venus is once again, moving along towards her destiny with this transit, but no longer complementary to the Martian energy as she was in July. So this is one of those aspects. And then there's a couple aspects that are approaching to Venus right after this full moon, which are that she is beginning to form a semi-square to the sun. And so that's a friction energy between what you want and what you are. So you might feel some kind of discouraging energy. And then the other aspect that Venus is about to form is an opposition to Chiron. So you have this bold move with the full moon, and then right after, the modern ruler of the decan in which the full moon is happening suddenly has friction energy around them. And so you have to fight through it, but it's no longer roses and peaches, you know what I'm saying? And so that is bringing some kind of friction. But that's okay, you need to work through that. And I mentioned the square with Pluto that happened as I'm filming about the 12th, 13th of August. That will all come into catharsis when Venus goes through her retrograde period in Capricorn. So it's this Mars-Venus discordant energy is a part of a bigger cycle, so we can talk about that separately. I've already mentioned this some months ago when they formed the conjunction in Leo. Needless to say, there is hope. This is just a step in the process for Venus. But here is what I've been waiting to tell you and what all these explanations are for. So there's a beautiful trine between the two rulers, and there's a grand trine on the north node, which is that point where there was Aldebaran and we were moving towards our destiny this summer, more so than ever before, picking up the pieces and carrying on. But it's not really just a grand trine, right? This energy is actually a kite, which is focused on the south node, release of the past. And so this is a big symmetry to do with, you should see my goosebumps telling you this. This is a big symmetry to do with catharsis of the last 2 years and this destination of moving forward. So it's completely in symmetry and synchronicity with the transits of June and July that are pushing us forward to clear our past, to move towards our destiny. And here is the real beautiful symmetry of this kite. A kite is a frequency of pushing forward. Like imagine a kite in the sky where this is the nose and this is the tail, right? So you're moving forward towards the north node, away from the south node, cathartic of the past. And on each side of the kite is controlled by one of the rulers of this full moon. Okay, so that's beautiful in and of itself. But here's a deeper level to this kite, and this is where a lot of astrologers won't really like this. But this is the traditional ruler, and this is the modern ruler. So we have a giant symmetry between the old and the new working together towards not a final solution, but towards a grand solution. So what does that mean for your own life? In the big picture of things, it's a renegotiation of the past and the future. But in terms of your own personal life, you too are dealing with energies that are challenging you to choose between the past and the future at this time. And so at this time, it's your the best way to approach this energy of Saturn, Uranus this year, this full moon, the catharsis of all of it, picking and choosing of who you want to be or where you want to go, is not necessarily choosing to be radical in the future and forward moving only. It's not about clinging to the past and choosing tradition, that which is safe and that which is tested and true. It's about keeping up on your toes and constantly choosing a balance of power between the old and the new. So whole foods, but yet medicine, all of these things. What did we say? No plastics, right? But yet mental health support, So there's beautiful things in the past that we need to, at this time, put into use for our best progress forward, the things you've learned from your relationships with other people. Employ your knowledge, expertise, and the things you know, which is Saturn, but then also have this radical edge to you, which is moving forward. And likewise, with Saturn and Venus ruling this full moon and flanking each sides of this kite, you have the traditional, old, that which is tested and true, and that which is new and daring and ready to embrace with a full heart. So this kite is really quite special, and this full moon is quite special, but I don't think it's the end of the road. I don't think it's the last step, but I hope that for many of you this is the last step of making a decision and coming into catharsis about things, coming into realization about things, and in terms of who you want to be and how you want your world to be like, releasing things that no longer work and embracing new things that are exciting and better adapted, but also not going after pipe dreams or not holding on to the past. So finding a balance between the two. And so this beautiful symmetry on this full moon, I think, is indicative of its energy, and I hope that it gives you some food for thought. It's like a giant mirror between the old and the new, right? Saturn and Venus, a giant mirror. And so I think that it's up to you to choose what works best in your life, and choosing a balance between the two. Don't get too stubborn about one or the other, because you'll end up cutting yourself short. Now, moving forward, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll say it quick because this took a long time to explain. There's an activation point also that's forming right now between Mars and Mercury in the opposition to Neptune that will soon create a stronger trine to Pluto. So there's a sextile between Neptune and Pluto, and specifically Mercury, but Mars also is very active in this point. Now, we know Mercury, it has a lot to do with communication, but Mars is a strong planet of communication and asserting your truths and so forth as well. So moving past this full moon, looking forward a bit, we'll do more content, about this, looking into September and so forth. But I think that it's very important for you to start thinking about or getting ready. I'm a Virgo, so I'll tell you always to get ready. But thinking about how communication will develop and where you will take communication moving forward, okay? So Saturn, Mercury conjunction, opposite Neptune, trining Pluto with Neptune sextiling Pluto is the next step. This will put a huge focus on Mercury for the next 6 weeks. And so we'll be talking about Mercury a lot. Mercury will go retrograde in Libra at the end of September. So that's going to be a huge kind of next culmination point. So from this there's a big catharsis in summary, and I'll do a bigger summary in a minute. But there's a big catharsis here and summary on this full moon. And that is sort of splaying into two frequencies. One in which we're going to be moving towards the full moon in Pisces in September, and then Libra energy that Venus is governing, hey girl, hey, and Mercury are going to take center stage. And so communication, thoughts, it's going to be a very thinking oriented process. And so moving forward, that's where we're going, and I'll see you there. Remember, I'm your North Node captain, so I'm not here to be your boss, but I'll try to tell you as much as I can see. So yeah, so I hope that this was clear. I'm going to do a little summary for those of you that are just like, all these aspects she just said, but so watch that next, and then I'll do the activated points, and those are really fun. I know you guys like them. I like doing them for you, and I hope you have a wonderful full moon. You know, since I've been back, the full just activate my channel a bit if you can. You can do that by leaving a comment and a like. And definitely subscribe. It helps the channel bounce back after my long absence. So I mean, I understand why it's happening, and I hope that we can, you know, get things going a good way again. So here's a card, and I don't know if you guys know me well yet, but I love compassion. I always preach compassion and understanding. Have compassion for your circumstances. Have compassion for yourself. Have tolerance towards things. The people who are reaching out to you, reach out to them in compassion, and try to understand everyone from where they're coming from, and live. I think that this last year has really taught us this, as my personal reflection about like really doing a better job in being kind to others and living in a brighter light. So, oh, now Venus and Cancer, sorry, getting emotional. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. I can't believe this was 50 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. Bye.